I'm a planner. If you haven't figured that out yet, that's something that you all should probably know about me. I'm a planner. I plan. I love my lists and my schedules. Checking my Google Calendar and seeing all of the nice, neat boxes laying out what the week has in store for me is a weirdly calming experience. I have a box of brightly colored Sharpie pens that I use to color coordinate my life in my paper planner, of which I am very proud. I like to plan because I like to be prepared. I like to know what's coming. I want to be ready. One of my greatest fears in life, I think, is being caught off guard. Being blindsided and being unprepared, I don't react well in situations like that. So when I read texts like our gospel lesson for today, and I hear the people asking Jesus when the end of times will be and what signs they should look for, I am right there with them. Hi, yes, Jesus, if you could send me a calendar invite for the end of the world, that would be great. Just let me get that on my schedule so I can be ready, so I can plan ahead. It's an uncomfortable thing to think about, isn't it? The end of the world or the end of times. Or as Jesus put it, the days when not one stone will be left upon another, all will be thrown down. It's unnerving, to say the least, to look around at everything we know, everything we have created and built here together, and realize that someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe in hundreds or thousands of years, it could all cease to exist. And when these people ask Jesus for a date and time for the end of the world as we know it, he doesn't say, as he does in the Gospel of Matthew, that no one will know the day or the hour. Instead, he actually does give them signs to look for. Jesus gives a vague answer, as he is apt to do, but an answer nonetheless. He tells us to watch for wars and political conflict and chaos and natural disasters. And so we've tricked ourselves into thinking that we could use these signs as a way of predicting when the end will come and what will be the cause. Except here's the thing. At any given time, somewhere in the world throughout history, there have always been wars. There has always been political conflict and chaos, and natural disasters have happened regularly. So as far as signs go, these aren't particularly helpful in nailing down an exact date and time for the apocalypse. I've avoided using that word, apocalypse, until now for a reason. It doesn't really mean what we think it means. Our modern society has co-opted this word to use it to refer to the coming destruction of the world. But it originated from a Greek word that actually means to uncover or to reveal. So whenever Jesus starts using apocalyptic language, like he does in our gospel reading for today, it's not usually meant as a forecast for future destruction, but rather it's meant to uncover and reveal what's wrong with our present. Apocalyptic language is meant to challenge and disrupt the status quo. It's meant to reveal that which needs to change within ourselves and the society we've created, which can sometimes feel like the end of the world. It was the temple which sparked this conversation. Their beautiful temple, adorned with stones and art and gifts dedicated to God. The people looked at what they had created and they were proud of it. And when Jesus heard this, he quickly told them that these things wouldn't matter in the end. It would all simply be a heap of rubble. And by these things, Jesus meant more than the temple, the physical building they had constructed. Jesus was also talking about what the temple at that moment represented. When Jesus walked into the temple a little earlier when he arrived in Jerusalem, he declared, "It is written, 'My house will be a house of prayer,' but you have made it a den of robbers." Jesus made it very clear how he felt about the temple they had created. It did not represent the presence of God in this world as it was supposed to. Instead, it represented corruption and oppression. The people had become too focused on money and material wealth and had lost sight of those among them who were in need of help and protection. But Jesus didn't simply lecture them and then wash his hands of the mess. He continued to show up to the temple to teach and be present. He spoke the truth, even when the truth made him a target for persecution. He spoke a revealing and risky truth, even though he knew the day would come when all of this would come crumbling down anyway. He still actively worked to make it into a place where the presence of God could be found. Jesus revealed the reality of what was happening in the temple because he knew that ignoring these injustices would not make them go away. Waiting for the end of times would not change the present reality of oppression. What apocalyptic truth would Jesus reveal among us today? What realities do we ignore because we've either convinced ourselves that it's someone else's problem, or we become too apathetic or just too tired to care about? What difference does the end of the world make in all of this? If we knew the world was going to end tomorrow, or even in just 20 or 30 years, what would we change? Would we come up with a plan to address the truths we've been ignoring or avoiding all these years before it's too late? What's holding us back from making those changes today? Jesus gave us a vague response to our query about the end of times for a reason, because we were asking the wrong question. Because the good news of this apocalyptic, revealing text is that we don't have to worry about when the world is going to end. Because the end of the world will not change our calling in life, to be the embodiment of Christ in this world. We don't have to wait for the end of the world to help bring about the end of corruption, oppression, and marginalization. The end of the world is not the beginning of our call to action, nor is it a sign that we can just give up and wait for it all to be over. We are called to be like Christ, practicing radical love and disrupting institutions that cause marginalization and destruction every single day of our lives. Whether the end is tomorrow, in a few decades, or in a few thousand years, we are always called to embody and live out the mission of Christ. Martin Luther knew this. He said, "Even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree." No matter when the world ends, we are still called to plant trees today. No matter when the world ends, we are still called to invest in caring for our world and our communities today. No matter when the world ends, we are still called to overturn and disrupt corrupt and oppressive institutions today. No matter when the world ends, we are still called to be the presence of God today. Our central question as a Christian community should not be how to plan and prepare for the end of the world. That is not, nor has it ever been, the task Jesus left us. Our central question as a Christian community should be how to prepare ourselves to be the constant embodiment of Christ in this world, even and especially when it feels like the world is falling apart. Because if we aren't embodying the radical love of Christ already, then what are we waiting for?